Good evening, everyone. The today's session we are planning to do is very ambitious. We are going to do some overview in the application we are working right now, and we are going to do also walkthrough to the most important thing regarding to the hands-on experience you are getting for this assignment. I will have to stop sharing and see what happened with the button. I'm sorry. And I will start again. Recording and we continue. So as I mentioned, the today's session is quite ambitious because we are going to do overview on what we are doing during these 3 weeks, which is quite complex a data analytic application on unstructured data, which is text, with the purpose to do sentimental analysis on unstructured text data using advanced technology, which is the today fashion in speed analytic, which is in-memory analytic on cloud. So you see all these buzzwords all together. That's why all the material related with this is scheduled for 3 weeks. So we have time to learn. We have to do some practical work also. So beside the quick overview I'm going to do, we are going to proceed then with walkthrough with the technology, and you already have started working in parallel with reading, and you understand that there are many different components to keep together, to keep in mind, to connect, to follow, and there are many details. If you miss just one of the details, you cannot continue. So that's why it's very important what we are going to do today, and you keep track. Nothing is difficult, just the practice is very important. So let's very quickly first delineate what is the importance of in-memory computing. In the classroom, you have several lectures and material regarding the key point of sentimental analysis, the basic of text mining overview, what you have learned previously in the program, and some new stuff uploaded in the classroom. So after all this material, we start talking that this practical task of sentimental analysis requires, let's say, different technology with the purpose to get, let's say, meaningful result for this task. So that is the purpose in memory computing. And like the name indicate, you will do the processing in memory in order to do something very fast for certain application. And what are the benefits of this type of computation? The thing is when you do certain type of task and you need speedy analysis and the result obtained in very short period of time, actually you bring competitive advantage to the business, but it has to be also with an affordable reduced cost, because if the cost is too high, this competitive advantage is not going to be affordable for many businesses. So we are talking about here application which really require this type of processing, but in some, let's say, with reasonable cost, and that is going to be the purpose of in-memory analytic. So think about, I have in this slide several examples which are part of, let's say, application which would need this fast processing in memory analytic, loyalty card processing, wireless provider doing very aggressive marketing to millions of customers simultaneously, or let's say the local government, which is running the smart meters, collecting information about each of them from the sensor and performing instant analysis. Why instant analysis? Because the purpose of this local government, which collects information for smart meter, is to analyze this huge volume of data in real time and direct the traffic, where the traffic should be, to which part of the city. So smart meter is typical example of very fast analytic, which would benefit of technology which is in memory analytic, or wireless provider, as I mentioned, which blasts a message to blast some promotion to a million of customers, need to collect this information, process it in very short period of time, and get the insight to proceed with the next action to this customer, which is actually the purpose of this marketing initiative. So most of this type of application, as we mentioned, require very fast processing. But think about, traditionally, fast processing was interpreted like you're doing everything in memory, in the RAM of the computer, which is the faster way to process the information. But you understand, when we talk about application, which I had in the previous slide, we are talking about huge amount of data collected from millions of sensors. So even the memory today, the physical RAM, is getting cheaper. There is no reasonable way to fit this information physically in RAM. So we have to think about other technological solution, even though we are not talking about the brute force to fit all this huge amount of sensory information in a physical memory, because it's totally unreasonable. Fortunately, the technology today is advancing in such a way that we have technology capable of processing data at the CPU speed, which is, let's say, faster than accessing RAM, because accessing RAM is still a bottleneck in the computer architecture. So we're talking about technology, in addition to doing this at the speed of the CPU, keep this in mind, the new technology in memory analytics we're talking about, processing at the speed of the CPU, not at the speed of the RAM, at the speed of the CPU, and with reasonable cost. Reasonable cost means if the traditional in memory processing, traditional in memory processing is when you work in physical RAM, and the cost of a gigabyte is $5,000 per gigabyte. We're talking about this modern technology today, which work at the speed of the CPU, and the price of a gigabyte is less than a penny. So that is this new technology in memory analytics we are talking about. And of course, as you can imagine, these are different patents. For instance, IBM has a patent for this technology. This is the technology which is in the DB2 Warehouse we are using. IBM patent is named Blue. Don't think about any meaning about Blue. This is just the name they gave to this technology. Besides IBM, all big players in analytics today, they have similar technology with different patents. Oracle has this technology. AWS has Redis. Amazon, Microsoft has. So all big players in analytics they have similar deployment of in-memory analytic, because today this is very important for the businesses to give solution to certain problem in very short period of time, working with big data, huge amount of data. So practically we are going to work with one of these technology, which is blue, and I have several bullets here which delineate the most important characteristic of this technology. Here we are talking about the IBM blue technology. They built in memory analytic to the DB2 Warehouse with embedded RStudio, predictive modeling, and business analytic tools. We are already exploring some of them. You see the SQL part, you see the RStudio, but different predictive modeling. And what is behind this technology are certain point, most important of them here in this slide, which is prefetching data, no decompression, data skipping, and advanced processing, very important, which do not require the entire data set to fit in memory. So we're talking about here combined technology, very suitable for this type of problem. So if you are interested in more detail to the computer science part of this architecture, there is more, let's say, different article you can go, which is not the purpose of the data analytic class. We mostly are here focusing in type of problem which really need this type of solution, and about the predictive modeling capability which are at hand of the data analyst and can be used to solve problems. So that is our focus as a data analyst, data scientist. But if you have some computer science interest, you can proceed with more detail in this computer science architecture. Here I just putting the most important thing which you may be interested. One important thing which is good to know, why we are talking about in-memory analytic and not about Hadoop. Hadoop is good for when Google bring this concept 10 years ago, embeds the computation to the data, and the design of Hadoop was really successful for this huge amount of data. But Hadoop architecture is not good for speed. So we are going here about technological solution for big data, which are specific application of big data, huge amount of data, which in addition need high speed of analytic. So what Hadoop is good is for problems which actually do not require high speed. For high speed technology like in-memory analytic. And what is important in one of the characteristics in memory analytic, we're talking about massive parallel processing. Hadoop is not parallel processing, is distributed processing. So these are two different kind of processing computer which are suitable for different type of big data problem. I think this is the important thing as a data analyst, data scientist we have to keep in mind. And very important that this massive parallel processing, which is the base of in-memory analytic, is based in what is a columnar, the data is stored in columnar architecture. Why columnar? If you remember a couple of lecture ago, in the class when we were talking about big data storage, we talk about that the columnar storage is the adequate for big data. Why? Because we are talking about million of row and several column. And to query a couple of query, you access the column. You don't query million of a row. So that is the benefits of the columnar storage, which is the implementation of in-memory analytics. So columnar data storage, and the speed is comparable to the raw data storage, but with the benefits to work for big data. And other important characteristic of in-memory analytics, let's say, technology, is that it scales linearly. Hadoop doesn't scale linearly. In Hadoop, you add a cluster, but the performance doesn't increase linearly with adding a cluster. In this technology, which is based on the massive parallel processing, we're talking about if you are going to use, for instance, a cluster and you need 1 hour with one server. If you have 4 servers with this technology, the same processing is gonna last 15 minutes. So we're talking about that the performance, it scales linearly with adding resources, which is not the case of Hadoop. So I want to stress on this, and you understand this is different technology for big data, and of course, is more expensive than Hadoop, but still is very cheap compared with what is the physical memory solution. We are talking about a gigabyte of memory costs a penny. And very importantly, this technology has embedded predictive modeling, which is the embedded RStudio in the IBM resources we are using, with different predictive modeling like decision tree, association analysis, linear regression, and so on and on, which is actually our focus to solve an application on textual data with the purpose of sentiment analysis, which is our purpose. So here I want to also to mention something which is very important. For several years ago, the hype was, oh, that of the SQL databases, big data is not for SQL. As you see, what we have been doing in this class since the beginning, SQL is back, and what we experienced in the last 3 years is the merge of SQL and not SQL. You see SQL on top of Spark, Hadoop, and you have SQL-based tool to work with in-memory analytics also. So this is very important tendency today, merge of SQL and not SQL, and SQL-like tools are all over embedded in the platform we are working, starting with Spark, Hadoop, and the one we are working now. Before proceeding to the walkthrough, I would like to stress very much in what we are doing in the cloud. Why? We didn't teach you anything explicitly about the cloud, but as you can see, we are working in the cloud. Why we are working in the cloud? Because today this is requirement to get a job. Most of the company are doing portion or most of the work in the cloud. Why? Because cloud in the last year has, in the last few years, has demonstrated a very, let's say, beneficial for the businesses for certain characteristics, because it reduces costs. If you have, if you are a company and moving everything to the cloud, you reduce the IT infrastructure costs related with paying technical personnel, upgrade, energy consumption, and so on and on and on. In addition, very important, I would say, the second bullet, scalability, is one of the biggest benefits of the cloud. For instance, let's think, in a company, you have on-premise server, and this server, the task in your company, Monday, Tuesday, the server is working on-premise at 80%. Wednesday, Thursday, 5%. Friday, 90%. Saturday, Sunday, 0%. So this is very inefficient use of the resources. So scalability of the cloud is it's scaled to the amount of tasks you need to use. Someone is managing this cloud and you use the amount of, let's say, of resources which are needed for the work your company is doing. And it has proven so much benefits that everyone is moving to the cloud. Analytic is in each of the companies to the cloud, and as a data analyst, data scientist, you will have to learn and perform in the cloud. So I'm not going to talk about all the benefits of the cloud. You can read more. I just have here, them here. But you must understand that the main benefits is affordability. And this affordability in order is given that we are talking about people are sharing resources. Working in the cloud, you share resources with other customers. So when sharing resources is not the same like you work in your personal computer, and you have to approach the work in the cloud in different fashion because you are sharing resources with someone. And the benefits of the cloud are just because of this, because you can share resources with other people, and in order to improve performance in the cloud, everyone has to be conscious about this sharing and obey some rule. So up to here in the class, up to week 6 including, we work with services which didn't have strict restriction. That was at purpose selected, so you learn to work. But you have to be conscious that when you log into the cloud, you are in the shared resources. And think about shared resources the same way you manage water in your house, electricity. Usually you open the faucet, you wash your hand, you finish it, you close it. It's the same thing in the cloud. You share resources, and in order to have good performance, everyone has to learn how to work. That's why most of the resources in the cloud has some limiting posts. And it's not just because we are working with certain account which has certain limit. When you go to the industry has different limit, and you will have to be conscious your company, what limitation, what is the contract, and how you use the resources. So think about using the resources in the cloud the same way you use water and electricity in your home. So this limitation in the RStudio environment we have starting with previous week, starting working in the in memory analytics, is actually not very strict restriction, but is to get you trained to learn and work in the cloud. Because actually RStudio is restricted to 0.5 capacity units during each actual physical hour. That means for a month, you would have 100 hours of consumption of RStudio, which is huge. Just I'm making the following account. As a student in our program, your average work per week is 20 hours. Let's assume that you are not skilled in the software, you are not skilled working in the cloud, and you will invest almost half of the time in working in the cloud. and the other half in reading, which the proportion should be different. You should actually spend more time reading and then not more than 40% working in the practical thing. But let's assume you are learning and you are going to use half of the time. That means 10 hours per week. In a month, this is 40. From the 140, this is plenty of the resources. So I have here something which we have repeated in several announcements in the classroom. And you have to make sure that when you are not going to work, you exit properly RStudio, because just closing the browser tab doesn't stop running RStudio in your account. You have to properly exit running the Q command and then make sure there is not runtime environment in your Watson Studio active just before finishing work. Make sure the same way you are going to vacation, what you do, you go, you check all faucet, oh, everything is closed, my house is not going to flood when I'm out of home. Exactly the same way. You go, you check the runtime environment in the manage menu, you make sure that everything is properly closed, and then you exit. And this is, just get accustomed to this, because this should be something very natural when you get skilled working in the cloud, in the company, in your future work. So this should be totally natural. So before proceeding with the walkthrough, if there is any question up to here, I'm ready to answer. If not, we can do Q&A after the walkthrough is finished. You can unmute yourself if you have urgent question, or post it in the chat, which I don't see the chat here. I don't see any question. If we don't have question, we proceed. Elena, do you want to share your presentation so I don't have to move it? It's
Sure.
better that you speak and you, so I'm going to stop sharing this. You share the same thing, but you continue from the next slide.
Oh, okay. I see what I can do. I can just go ahead and share my screen. How about that? Share screen, and I'm gonna hit share. Okay. So we stopped at managing the Watson Studio resources efficiently. Now let's look at the actual big picture for this assignment. Well, that's what you're doing. You're going to go to the assignment folder. You're going to right click on a CSV file, right? And you will download it. But very important, do not open the file. Just download it, and you'll upload it as is. Do not make any changes to the file content. All right, so you're going to upload it, and you're going to check the log. Well, there should be no errors because I took care of it for you. I took care of data cleaning for you. So there should be no load errors. Everything should load smoothly. All right?
This is Linesh.
Yes.
Yeah, I just went through this step and I was able to load the file successfully. As long as I don't open it, I just download it from the website and then upload it on DB2. It went okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
The only thing that people want to take note of is if you already created a table, let's say, and that that was unsuccessful, you want to create and load the table. Load the data into some different table name, because if you keep loading it into the same table, I was running into issues with that.
Yeah, and I think somewhere here I have code how to drop the table, because now you want to keep, actually for this specific thing, you want to keep the same table name, because
right, yeah.
Yes.
Either you keep the same table name or you apply, you
Yes.
kind of copy to a new one.
Yeah, but the thing is, the code won't work. You'll have to edit the code.
Okay, you can drop it.
Yeah, but in the slides here, I have the command you could run to drop the table programmatically, or you could just delete it. Yes, okay. So Linesh, I'm so glad that you were able to confirm that it works. Okay, and you're gonna do the same thing for your assignment 3. There are 2 files, and you can choose one out of 2. Right? You're going to save it, and you won't open it. It's because of the timestamp. Right? There is one field in there with a timestamp. Okay, so here's the big picture. You're going to download it, the file, you'll upload it, you're going to run some SQL, you'll write some meaningful queries, and you're going to read data in R, you'll do some R analysis, and you're going to interpret your findings. Right, so that's up here. There are some more rules. I don't want you to submit any tickets to IBM unless we instruct you to do so, okay? Now, do not cancel your IBM Cloud account and do not upgrade it. We've had students who did it at this point of the semester, which is not good. If you do it, then neither Linesh nor me, no professor will be able to assist you. Yeah, I see somebody posted a question. Other limitation on SQL code. Before there was a limit. Oh, you mean, what do you mean, the limitation on SQL code? Well, there is a certain syntax that needs to be followed. Each query has a certain syntax that needs to be followed, right? Okay, so now, when you get into R, do not update the R.
No, Milena, I think there is a confusion between service hour limit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not
No,
such a
no,
thing
no.
in SQL.
No,
Not
no,
such a
no.
thing. The only runtime environment is RStudio. We are not using any other runtime environment for this assignment. The only limitation are on runtime environment, which is RStudio. Okay.
So, I misunderstood the question. That's right.
Well, I think this is the question about.
Okay.
Regarding syntaxes and rule, it's obvious
Oh,
that
yeah.
SQL code has a restriction, like Python has a restriction, like any language. So I think this is the question. Is this okay, Dennis?
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood it. All right, so here is the thing here. You don't want to keep on start, stop, because when you stop, the load process behind the scene is generating another process to stop. So that's where some students kill the service before. You don't want to open the same application in multiple tabs. Then you don't want to add more than one instance of DB2 warehouse on the cloud. Okay, so for you guys, don't do this, just one, or otherwise you'll be getting yourself confused. Okay, looks like I have a question. No. Oh, okay, I see. Anyways, so you want to avoid stopping stuff, and you can see, here is the thing. I don't know how much to emphasize this. Do not copy your SQL code to Microsoft Word, because you end up introducing some odd characters, and it's very difficult to fix the code once bad characters are introduced. And I worked with some of you earlier, and especially in database class, and you might remember how many times I used to repeat this part. Do not put the SQL code in Word, because after that, after you introduce some characters such as quotes, right? Microsoft Word quotes. After that, it's very difficult to fix the code. You may have to restart writing it from scratch. Here, forget about the browser back button. It does not exist, okay? And here is just about exiting RStudio. So now sometimes you might be running into an issue. Well, makes sense, but you want to post your question and also check the discussion for questions. All right. So next thing, this is a big no-no. If you delete the service, you lose all your work, okay? Well, the deletion cannot be undone, and we cannot restore the work. Like, see, this is an example. This is a service, and if I go do this, delete service, well, you're losing your work. Don't do that. So here's some additional helpful tip. You want to save all your work on your PC because, well, you never know. Saving SQL script in application itself, well, good idea, but you also want to back up a copy. Because suppose that it's a Sunday night, the assignment is due, and the service is down for scheduled maintenance. What you gonna do? You know. So here, I'm just saying use TextPad or Notepad. Notepad is free. Notepad plus plus is also a good one. Notepad plus, rather, right? Yeah. So use a text editor. Do not use the rich text editors such as WordPad and Microsoft Word because of the characters. Okay. Now, here, this is what I want to clarify. There is something called ungraded exercises. If they're not graded, it does not mean that you don't have to do them. You need to do them, okay? You need to do them. And in fact, on your quiz question, there might be a quiz question on the output returned by the query. There are like, what, 10 queries? I expect you all to be able to do at least half, the first half. Because the second half, they're getting harder, but I want you to attempt it, and then at some point next week, I'll give you the solutions, okay? But I want you to attempt it, and here are some good news. You may discuss the ungraded queries in a discussion forum. You may discuss ungraded queries. Now, you want to follow the instructions and go beyond examples in the workroom, but you want to make sure that you meet the minimum requirements first, because I've had students who got really ambitious with R code, and they started downloading packages and etc. But as a consequence, they end up not doing the minimum first, right? And this is a quote: the best way to get something done is to begin. Okay, just remember that. You have to start. You don't wait until the end. And yeah, speaking of R packages, R was updated recently, so now we are in version 3.52. Several packages that you were asked to install, such as text mining, you no longer need to install. So whenever you want to use a package, you want to check if it's there for you already. If it is, do not install. Please do not install. Because, well, if you do, you end up overwriting the pre-installed version, and then you're gonna get a lot of compatibility errors. Well, some of you ran into an error. I believe it was sometime like last Friday-ish. Yeah, some of you ran into an error where you installed the package prior to update, and then as a result, the built-in package got overwritten, and you were unable to load the IBM DBR package in memory, so on. If things like that happens, you may want to start a new project, right? So, but do not download anything. Be careful. Be careful with downloading the packages. You want to ask me and Lanesh first, okay? Now, well, this is a service that you add. You want to make sure that you select an entry plan. Now, here, you might get this organization service limit. Well, that's because you're limited to 10 services in that category. And what counts toward that is this one here, DB2 warehouse on the cloud, and then the Spark, right? So at times, I've seen people adding maybe like 5 or 10 copies of the service. This is no go. It's not gonna work, okay? So if you receive this error, you want to go back to your IBM cloud. Oops, sorry, I'm not sure. Okay, here it is, right? So this is the specific service detail. But if we go to resource list, right? That's your resource summary on your dashboard. When you are on your dashboard, right here, right, resource, on your dashboard, you're gonna see the resource summary, right? This is how you return to your service. This is your resource summary. When you click on view resources in here, it will take you to Cloud Foundry services. Your account is limited to 10. Faculty account is limited to 40. So you're gonna scroll down sorry, don't pay attention to all of this, okay? You have to have only one copy. The reason I have several copies is because each service could be on different hosts. So sometimes when a student reports a problem, I check if there is a problem with specific host. But for you, you want to add only one copy and you just click on it, right? And that's how you return to the service, right? So in here, I already have the service open. I'm at the run SQL in this case, but we'll get to it. Now, how do you check the available space? Well, because if you notice that, well, your service is limited to 1 gigabyte, right? But trust me, this is more than plenty for this assignment. This is more than plenty for this assignment, but some students ask me how to check it. Well, it's at the top over here. It's telling me how much storage I have been using. See this? This is at the top. If I want to find it out. Now here, this is, well, I just put some troubleshooting here. This is an error and this is an answer, right? Because your trial account has a limit on number of services. So if you see this error, you want to check how many services you've got in your, right, resources. Now here, well, this is, I'm just showing you what might happen if the data load is unsuccessful. You're gonna see this exclamation point and you're gonna see the warnings in here, right? But take a look at this. Here you've got the number of rows loaded and rows read. Even though there are no rows rejected, this load had some problems. And the problem was that there were the new line characters inside the text values. I'll tell you that there were some new line characters that I had to clean up, okay? So that's the reason you got the warnings. But usually if you get the warning, you want to look at the log and see what's going on. But some of you today, some of you got something, a screen where it is an error. Well, if you just see the big thing like a load error, it means that something is wrong with your input file. Usually is a date format because one of your fields you have a date, right? So that's the reason I don't want you to open the file when you download it, because once you open the file, you change the date format, right? And the date needs to be in a certain format. So here, this is another indication that something went wrong. You have like extra columns added. Well, it's because when I tried that file here, I had the new line characters inside the text field. Okay, so I had to open the file in Excel and clean it up. Okay, so this is another indication that something went wrong. Okay. Well, sometimes I like to show what could go wrong. Oh, this is a piece where Linish was getting into earlier. When you load data into the table, well, there are several options. One option is to create a brand new table. Another option is to override, but it will just wipe all existing data and override. So that's one way. Another way would be to do this. So I loaded the file, right, and something went unexpected. I can just do this. See this? I'm gonna go to the Explorer, and when I do this, I'm going to see my schema here. See, this is my schema. This is the airline sentiment table. I can just go in here and delete. This is the easiest way, right? But on your slides, I put a statement how to do it programmatically, okay? But one thing that is tricky is that when you do delete, the question is, does the space get reclaimed right away? Probably not, right? So you want to truncate it. And I have the code somewhere. We'll get to it. I have the code somewhere in one of the slides. Okay. Okay. Oh, it's in here. See, this is an example. Truncate table, and this is a table name, and I put the word immediate because you want the space that was taken by table to be occupied. And this is an example on how to verify that the table is gone. So if you have a table that you want to remove, one option is to do delete, or another option is to do this truncate. And immediate is because you want the space to be reclaimed right away. Okay? So I'm so glad that Linus brought up this question because it's answered here. All right, so, well, this is another way. You could run the drop table statement, but again, the drop table statement, you might not reclaim the space right away. Okay. Now, well, here are some frequently asked questions. Suppose that I did my load, right, and I forgot to take my screenshot. If you forgot to take your screenshot, well, this is what you're gonna do. You go into the landing page here, and here are all your statuses. So see, suppose that I forgot to take my screenshot when I loaded that data. What I could do is I could click on this, and I can go back to it to take my screenshot. Okay, so if you forgot to take a screenshot, you can just go back to it. Okay, not the end of the world. Now there is a way to return to it. Okay, now we're gonna do the SQL part. My favorite language is SQL. This is called the select statement clauses. Every select statement must have at least select and from. So you have to specify what you are pulling from the table and what table you're pulling it from. And these pieces must be in the correct order. Select, right? This is a comma delimited list of columns, or just a star, wildcard star, means you're selecting everything. From, it's going to be the comma delimited list of tables. Well, in this case, it's just one table. You don't have to worry about table joins, right? Where is going to be condition, but where clause filters the rows. A group by, this allows you to filter groups. Like, for example, I want to count the number of people per airline, number of rather posts per airlines. So I'm going to be grouping by the airline. Having, this will filter out the groups. For example, I want to display the airlines that have more than 50 tweets, perhaps, right? So here I'm going to be filtering the groups, because for each airline I'm going to get the count, and then I'm just going to knock out the ones from the list which have less than 50 posts, right? So the spelling of the table name and table column names matters. For example, if the table name is airline sentiment, and in my query, if I misspell it airline sent, then I'm gonna get a syntax error. So this thing, it matters. Syntax matters, the spelling matters. Well, regarding the case, I believe, yes, it's case insensitive. It's not case sensitive here in this case. But when you do the string comparison, it's case sensitive. Like, for example, if the Twitter name is Yelena, person who posted, right? Username is Yelena. Yelena in the uppercase is the same. It's not the same as Yelena in the lowercase, right? Well, okay. No. Well, this is going to be a little bit a tough part. The query in a subquery. So you could have a subquery that returns a single value. For example, I want to display the tweets that have above average sentiment count, right? Something like that. It could return the single column values list, or it can return like a virtual table. You can place your subquery in a select, from, where, and having clause, right? Well, in a select, because you could select not just from the actual table, you can run a select statement against the data returned by another select statement, right? The select, from, where, and having, that's where you could place the subquery. So if your subquery returns only one value, it's gonna go to where or to having, okay? So, and if it's well, it's possible to have a subquery inside the from clause, so that's gonna be sort of like a virtual table, right? So let's look at this example here. So now you have the negative reasons, and every negative reason has like a negative confidence, right? Well, if you look at the data here, let me go back. So here, if I go back to my SQL, right? And if you look at the table, right? Oh, actually, let's do this, select. Well, usually you don't do this. Usually you don't select all data, but for the purpose of this example, right? Just for the purpose of this example, I'm just gonna do run and run selected. Well, basically what I'm trying to show you, oops, see this? Why did I get an error? Because I misspelled the table name. That's why I got an error. But anyway, so your data has a column, trust me, your data has a column, something like sentiment confidence. And what I'm trying to do in here, in this table, in this query, I want to pull the negative reason. I want to pull the negative reason that has an above average confidence, right? I have an option here. I could go ahead and calculate what my average confidence is, right? So here it is. This is the query I'm talking about. So, oh, that's a different example, much easier example. Let's look at that then. Okay, take a look at this. Here I'm selecting the data. Here I have two conditions. The first condition is where read count is greater than 2, and here I want the confidence, the sentiment confidence, to be above average confidence, right? I want to pick the tweet that has a sentiment confidence above average, right? One thing I could do is I could run this query here and I could get the average, right? I could get the average sentiment confidence, which is 0.9, and I could just plug it in. Instead of having this whole thing here, right? I'm trying to say where the sentiment confidence is greater than 0.9, right? And a semicolon. Well, this is what basically I'm trying to do. But the problem is it a good practice to do it this way? No, right? So what I'm doing I take this 0.9 and I substitute this with the query that I ran to get this number. So this is basically what the subquery is. My inner query here, this is returning the average, right? It's returning the average airline sentiment confidence, okay? And I want to pull only the tweets that have airline sentiment confidence above 0.9, which is 1 in this case, right? This is what I did. I have 42 rows return. So the reason I threw in this condition is because I was getting too many rows. And I wanted also to illustrate that we can have more than one condition in a where clause, right? You put and here, well, the reason this is in a where clause, not in a having clause, because we're looking at the individual lines. So that's the reason I say this example is even simpler than example on these slides. In this slide, I put this condition inside the having because we want to, here we're looking at the negative reason and we're looking at the confidence for the negative reason, right? So here we want to look only at the reasons that have a negative confidence above average, right? So in a subquery, I'm computing the average, right? Here I'm looking at the average per negative reason, and I want to eliminate the ones with below average. So see this is what I'm doing here. I'm getting the average confidence, right, for the negative reason. Here, I'm getting the average in here. See this? So, in other words, this is equivalent to getting this number and substituting it. But what if my data changes? The data is subject to change. I'm not going to do this, run this query, take this number and plug it in. I'm not going to do this. Instead, I put the subquery in here, right? So this is just an explanation about the subqueries. I realize it's a little bit too complex, but Okay, so here we're going back to little errors that I made before. I misspelled. Whenever you get this error message, it means that you need to check the spelling of your column names. See this? Well, this is a comparison here. The column name is tweet_id. Here the underscore is missing, so that's the reason tweet ID is not a valid in a context level where it was selected, okay? It's because I missed the underscore. So that's a syntax error. Whenever you get this, you want to check the spelling, okay? And that's one reason I don't want you to be renaming the columns, because then you would have to go back and modify the code that was given to you. This is the tutorial. For tutorial, you're given the code, right? So here, this is another example where I misspelled the table name, right? Airline_sentiment. So you have to check that too. Okay. Now here, well, people in the past asked me, how do I find out how many rows the query returns? Because here, seriously, there is a limit on number of return rows. And even if the whole table matches your specified criteria, all records will not be returned because there is a limit. Well, and the limit is, okay, here it is, 100. You may increase this limit, but you cannot do more than 10,000, okay? There is a limit on number of return rows. Just keep that in mind. But if you want to find out how many rows get returned, you do this select count star from this. Oh, yeah, this is another example of the subquery, right? You're gonna have a query inside the from clause. And in this case, this is a virtual table type of subquery, right? So you're gonna have an inner query that returns the result, and the outer query takes the count from that result, right? But so here you're gonna know the actual number of rows that match the query criteria. Okay, this is a count. Okay, now, well, here, invalid operation error. So you may see this error once in a while. You would need to log out and try again in about half an hour. Okay, well, this happens. Well, this error here indicates there might be a table lock on a table. Well, that happens when you keep on start, stop, the process, and start, stop, and when you have more than one windows open. In one window, you're trying to drop the table. At the same time, in another window, you're trying to run a query against the table. You might end up creating a, what do you call it, deadlock. Okay, so, yeah. Well, I've seen this. Well, this one, another infamous thing. If you are idle, if your service is idle for a certain number of time, you're gonna get this, right? And when you choose to click on sign in, you'll need to enter credentials. But wait a minute, that's not your IBM Cloud credentials. This is rather credentials for the service, right? Do you remember when you started? When you started, you added the credentials for the service, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Here, I did not update the screenshot, but this is what you're gonna do in your code. This part here comes from the credentials, right? The way the credential part looks like actually depends on the time when you added the service and on the host where your service is at, okay? So basically you have a piece of code, you have a piece of credentials, and you have a code here. And what you have to do is you need to put the host name and you need to put your password, right? Your username and your password. But this is going to be your service password, right? So this is important. You have to grab that information, credentials part, right? Now let's see. This is an R error. This is an error that you'll get when you put the invalid username and password. This is highly possible. Typos are possible, right? So here what I'm doing is that, well, remember that you can run queries in multiple ways. You can go to the query editor. This is what I just did, right? I ran the queries from here. Or you can also run your queries from inside R. You run the iddf command, and then my connection is an object that you created at the time when you set up the credentials, right? You pass it as an input parameter, and another parameter is your actual SQL statement. But if this returns an error, right, SQL error, you want to go back. Well, there are many ways to troubleshoot this, but when I get an error returned by a query in R, I usually go in here and test my query from here straight. And once I get the query working, I take it back to the R. Okay? So here I put, well, you know, you have several tables to get the query metadata. In your walkthrough, I have an example of an actual query that you may run from the SQL editor, right? You may run it from here. But in here, I'm giving you a different code. You can check the table metadata from R. And this is the code you would do. But you would want to replace the table name, the schema name with your username, right? Okay, so let me see. I think I have a question. Should we not run our SQL queries in R because it wiped? No, you may run. Oh, you're asking, should you not run your SQL query in R because it will wipe your environment time? Well, no, that's not true. Why do you think it will wipe your environment time? Well, the thing is, well, in fact, you are going to run the query in R. How else are you going to pull data from the table into the data frame? You have to run the query in R. You need to run the query in R to get the data. But why are you so worried about the environment time? You've got 100 hours, right? When we talk about conserving hours, we don't mean not to do the homework assignment. That's not the way to conserve the hours. Conserving hours means that you use your environment as much as you need, right? You don't leave it open when you are not at your PC. But I mean, if you work for more than 100 hours on this assignment, you know, I'll give you a chocolate medal. Okay, anyways, another good thing is that the month is about to be over. So you've got this month and you also get the April hours. So don't worry about this. But you have to use it wisely. But conserving an hours does not mean not doing homework assignment. That's not an intent. Okay, so, well, this is how you would run the query. And you do have to run the query sometimes to pull data in R. How else are you going to do it? Right? But this is just to check the table metadata, right? Now, here, basically, well, what I did was I just put some of the troubleshooting tips for the iddf command and some of the steps. The first step is to check if the connection is open, right? And then you want to check your query in a DB2 warehouse and a cloud. And then if the query does not run, then you want to check the column name, etc. But I'm gonna answer your question slightly differently. This is what you want. You want to debug your query. You want to get the query to the working state while you are in here. Well, that's because it's easier to look up the column names, etc. While you're in here, get a working query, right? But then take your working query into R and run it into R, okay? But not doing the work is not the answer, okay? So here, well, what I'm trying to say is that you're gonna have several packages that have the same function, some function with the same name. For example, a rules has inspect function and a text mining package has inspect function. So if this is the case, you want to qualify the function name with the package name, right? you want to qualify the function name with the package name. This is important, right? If you receive this error, something like that, right? Okay. Now, well, this is another aspect to keep in mind. There is a disk space limit on the RStudio. Let me actually launch the RStudio. But this is mostly applicable to people like me who likes the visualizations, because sometimes if you have too many plots, you want to delete the ones that you no longer need. It's because each of these plots they take space. So let me go into the Watson Studio, and I'm gonna go to any of the projects. Don't worry that I have many projects here. It's because, well, I have to test the assignment. So sometimes to test the assignment, I have to create new project. Okay, so here it is. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm inside the project. I'm gonna click on launch. I'm gonna launch the RStudio, right? And I'll show you what I was talking about. So now you're gonna wait for it to start. Do not close the tab. Do not click the browser back button, because you're gonna have problems. Trust me, you will have problems. But you don't want to have problems. So what we need to do is we have to show you what the problems could be so that we don't have them, right? We try to prevent them. Now, this is basically how to save the space. I ended up with a problem because I like the images. I had a bunch of visualizations that I had to download and remove. So for you guys here, I put some useful arguments, how to check which packages are in memory, how to clear the screen, and how to delete all variables from memory. I put this as a reminder, so let's go back. Oh, see, this thing is loaded, right? So if you can see, I like to play around. I've got all my images here, right? So that piece here takes space. So here, this is basically what was in a memory in my last session. And here is the disk space utilization. So now if I go into the packages, notice that you should have something like this. This is the only package that I installed. And everything else is pre-installed, like text mining and everything, right? I don't need to install. But if there is something that you want to use for your assignments 3, which is not installed, you want to ask me in Laneige first, okay? You want to ask me in Laneige, because there have been times when students literally killed RStudio just by installing stuff, and the stuff was incompatible with what's already in here. Because bear in mind, there is a difference between cloud RStudio version versus desktop. Desktop RStudio version is now 3.5.3, right? But it's different from cloud version. You have packages here that you would not have in a desktop version, right? So it kind of like tries to remember where you stopped it, but still, you save the file here, right? You save the file here, and you also want to keep a copy on your desktop, okay? You want to keep a copy. Just in case, what if the system is down when it's time to submit your assignment, something like that, right? Or what if you made a silly error and lost your work, right? And when I mentioned something starting new project, adjust this file, new project, right? This is what you will do. But I'm gonna click cancel because I don't want to lose the work. And this file are the data. This is a file where the work gets saved, right? And when I launched the RStudio, you saw something. Well, this is one way you could go beyond in your homework assignment, because you got the script to build the network plot, right? You could go beyond by identifying the subsets of terms. This is what this visualization is basically doing. In addition to building the network of terms, I'm doing the subsets here. So that's basically what it is, right? Anyways, let's go back. I think, no, we're not quite. Yeah, this piece already was talked to you about. No. This is what I need to do to stop this, to stop RStudio. watch, right now I'm going to run the Q command, right? Q command, this is update, right? And then it's asking me save workspace image, right? I'm gonna say yes. Okay, now I'm done, right? I'm exited. Now I'm gonna go back to my project here. There are two ways to do it. One way, if you remember the project that you used when you launched the RStudio, and I'm gonna do, well, I have to be on the environment tab. Then I'm gonna do this. See this? This is the RStudio, and I'm gonna click on stop. But this is a little bit tricky because the hours that you see here, this is the hours you used for in this specific project. But to actually see your real hours, you do this. Look, I go to environmental runtime. Okay, and now I'm going to see, well, what's going on. I have to go to the environmental runtime, and then in here it's going to show me what I've used over the months. Well, this is wrong. This is wrong. I have to go into my projects, and then I want to see the overall runtime. Manage environmental runtime. This is supposed to show me how much resources I've used this month. See this? 3.1. But look at this. I had to test the code, didn't I? Yes, I did. I had to troubleshoot the issue that was reported last week. I did. But how many hours did I use? Well, see that? Not sure how, but somehow this is what I used. Okay, so if you use it mindfully, you're going to be totally fine, right? You're going to be totally fine. Nothing to worry about. But you have to use it mindfully, like what I just did. I just stopped, right? And I guess, yes, this is a screenshot. And another thing that I wanted to show you is advanced SQL that I have here. Well, this is just advanced stuff. Let's see if the session did not time out, it's gonna work. So what I want to do is, in one column, I want to display the location. In another column, I want to display the number of positive tweets. And next column, number of negative, right? And the number of neutrals and so on. This is a nice query. And I want you guys make sure you have this, how to do this. Run selected. If the session did not time out, it will run. Oh. If the session did not time out, more likely it timed out. But what this returns is that it returns the number of it's going to return the location, and then for each location it's going to return the number of tweets with a positive sentiment, negative, and neutral. That's what it's basically going to do. But the way it's done in here I'm checking if the airline sentiment value is positive, then it's a 1, right? Because the count function ignores the null values, right? So here, the code, it's doing this. If the airline sentiment is positive, it's a 1. If it's otherwise, it's null, right? And if it's a neutral, then it's a 1. If it's negative, then it's a 1. And here I'm producing the counts, number of positive, number of negative tweets, and then the total, right? Let me see, I have a question. I noticed it's not necessary to use S. Well, yes, that's right. Well, using S is not necessary when you do when you put the column alias, yes, it's not necessary to use S. But, well, in this case it's not, but it also depends on the application that you're using. Well, if it works without an S, fine. Yeah, it's not necessary. Oh, okay, I answered that question. Well, yeah, if it works without an S, then it's fine. But again, it depends what platform you're on. But here it works. But in this case, look at this. I think the problem is that my session may have timed out. But this query returns something beautiful. It goes tweet location, and then it's going to show the... well, basically, instead of having a separate line, right? Instead of having a separate line per sentiment, it's just going to show me in a column. It's going to show me nice in a column. Yeah, unfortunately, the session timed out. So basically, what I could do is I could go back to the resource list and relaunch the instance. Well, now I want you guys promise me that you're not gonna do what you just saw me do. You're not gonna have multiple copies of the service instance. The reason I do that is because all of these instances are sitting on different URLs. So sometimes a student reports that the service is down, so I go and check the service on that host. So that's the reason I have. And because I'm not limited to 10 services as you are, and I kind of have a tracking file where I track what I have and where. So, you know, don't do what I just showed you. Don't do this, okay? Because you're gonna be lost. Oh, I just did that, where is it, where is that, you know? So don't do this. But, as you notice that, oops. Yeah, so you promised me that you're not gonna do what I just did, okay? So I've got airline sentiment here. Now I'm gonna go to the run SQL, and I'm gonna take that query. Oops. I'm gonna take this query in here, and I'm gonna run it. I want you to see what it's gonna look like. And I actually promised somebody that I'll show you something like that, because you had a similar query in the Spark assignment, but in there you could do the sum. Here you cannot. You have to do the decode or a case statement inside. Okay, there we go. It's gonna run now. Well, I don't know what's going on, but usually it runs, and it returns a beautiful output. Not sure what's going on now. Anyways, trust me that it runs. And I'll give you a copy of this query. You can play with it. Okay? Let's see, do we have questions while trying to get it to run? Questions? Oh, I have something in the chat. One more. Naming columns from different subqueries. Is there an order in that they will be displayed? What do you mean? I'm sorry, what do you mean? I don't think I understand the question. Naming columns from different subqueries. Is there an order that it will be displayed? What displayed? The data or the columns? I'm trying to understand the question. Can you clarify? Columns. Oh, the columns, well, the columns will be, oh, if you do the select star, this is like a default order, the way it's stored in the database. But if you actually list the columns, whatever you list first is going to be first. They're going to be in the same order that you list them in a select clause. Okay? Well, yes, it's going to be.
Can you hear me?
Huh?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What my question is, Dennis, my question is, because we can create subqueries and we can name the columns from those subqueries, if we want the subqueries from the from to be first or middle, is there a particular order in which the columns will be displayed that's default?
Well, but whatever is displayed is from the main query. Whatever is displayed is from the main query. You have to specify what you display. I don't think I follow the question. Linesh, do you follow the question?
What you put in the select statement, like
Yes.
it's going to use the order from the select, and that the columns could come from, you know, your multiple inner queries or, you know, the joins that you may do, but
Yeah.
it will depend on what you have put in and the order that you've used for the select, the main select.
Yes. Oh. See this? This is an error, connection closed. It's because my session timed out. So I had to do is I had to relaunch the service. Connection closed. After a while, if you don't use the service for a while, I believe, I don't recall well, usually for security reasons, some companies like government agency do a 15 minutes. If you have not run anything in database for 15 minutes, it will time out. I'm not sure what the setting is here. So this is the reason I got this error. Well, the error says connection closed. Yes, it's because I have not been using the service for, I have been out of the service for some time. So once you are out of the service, then it's not gonna do it. You have to log back in. That's the thing, right? But the actual output that we're talking about is going to be the same, the columns will appear in the same order as in the select statement, okay? The columns will appear in the same order as in the select statement. Whatever is in the subquery, it works like it could return a single value or it can return the virtual table, right? Then it goes in a from clause, like you saw the example where I'm getting the number of records that meet the query criteria, right? I'm just getting the count. Well, sometimes you're going to see this, what I'm seeing right now. But I'm not going to do it right now. It's because I will lose connection. It's because I'm sharing the screen. But usually, when I get to something like this, I would have to clear the browser cache. Well, I usually clear the browser cache when I get something like this. This nonsense that I just showed you, right? Because it's pulling from browser cache. You want to clear the cache. If you see what I just saw. And then again, my problem is here, this stuff. My problem, I have multiple copies of the service. So please, please, please promise me that you're not gonna do it. The reason I do it is because I have students reporting that the service is not working and each service is on a different host. So like if I created the service and Lanesh created the service, we might be on a different host. So sometimes it works for me, but it does not work for Lanesh. So I had to open up my copy of the service in the same host to check what's going on. Okay, so that's the only reason I have what you just saw. Okay, and very important, you have to have your trial account for this service to work. If you did not apply your promo code when the class started, you won't be able to use this service. Okay, you won't be able to use this service if you did not apply your promo code at the time when the class started. Okay, so that's a reason some of you got, what do you call it, service broker error. Oh, there we go, I got it. Well, you know, Yelena is very persistent. So see this is what I'm pulling, tweet location. Then here, for each location, I want to pull the number of tweets with positive sentiment, number of neutral, and number of negative, and then the total, right? This is what it's doing in here, right? And then here I'm just doing the percentage. I did something more crazy. All right, see here, this is gonna do the percentage of tweets. Okay, this is going by the airline, and it showed me the total number of tweets, percentage negative, percentage neutral, percentage positive. All right. I'm gonna give you this query so you can play around with this, okay? Well, I'm just a SQL person. Anyway. Are there any questions? Denise, I actually liked your questions. I like everybody's questions. Any questions? Well, you know, you've got TAs for a good reason, because this assignment is the hardest in the class.
I do have one.
Huh?
I do have one more regarding the assignment we need to turn in.
Yes.
The code that we run in R, do you also want us to run it in SQL as a just as a separate program, or just you want us to primarily focus on R?
Well, if you're talking about this assignment, if you're talking about this specific assignment, right, the tutorial, well, you just run the code that was given to you. And also do the ungraded queries. That part is in here, in the SQL. But I'm showing you that you may run SQL in R. Well, I have to show you more than one way, because suppose that you're working on your queries for the assignment, right? Especially for the lab 3. And all of a sudden, DB2 warehouse service goes down, but it's just down through the front end. The application front end is down, but the database is still up. So you might be still able to connect to the database from R and pull data in R and do your queries this way. So it's good to know how to do both. Because see, sometimes Well, it happened before the front end of the DB2 warehouse on the cloud was down, but the database on the box was still running. So you could connect from R and run queries from R. Yeah. I mean, hopefully I answered the question, because for this specific assignment, for this tutorial assignment, your task is to run the scripts provided and to do the ungraded SQL exercises. So just to clarify, if the exercise is ungraded, it does not mean that you don't have to do it. You need to do it, but ungraded means that you don't need to turn it in, right? So this is learning part, but learning without an impact on the grade, without negative impact on the grade. Let's say this way, okay? So, well, oh, you want to see how to run a SQL script in R? Okay, sure, I can show you how to run a SQL script in R. Let's go back to that. Well, you know, this is called, what do I call this? Lanesh, what's my terminology for this? When students ask I do it, this is what? Customer service. That's my terminology. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so now I'm going back to my projects. And actually I have the script in there. Come on. Oh, because I need to go back here. Okay, and here I see the last project. I'm going to start the R environment and I'll show you. Thankfully, I have a script in there already. So I'm going to do launch RStudio. And actually, in fact, that line of code where you're reading the data from, you're reading the data in R. How are you reading the data in R? Secretly, you're running the query, aren't you? How are you doing this? In here, let me see. Let me go back. Well, you establish the connection, right? But what are you doing next? How are you getting the data actually in R? You're running the query, right? There is no other way to pull the data in R from the database. You're opening the database connection and you're running the query right here. So basically, see this? I'm gonna load the file, but this is an R script. It's a different version of an R script, but you see this? I'm running it right now, right? And that's it. So now I'm going to connect, right? What is this? What do you think is this? It's a query, right? I'm running the query now, and I'm going to put the query result into the data frame, and the data frame is called what? Sentiment. This is what I did. I just ran a query. There we go. See this? Now you could just do this. Well, take a look at this. This is a query that I showed you. This will return the result straight to the screen. I'm not storing the results in a variable. And this is what I showed you. This is going to show the tables in the schema. Well, this is me. I'm the owner, right? And that specific copy, these are the tables that I have, right? So that's what it's doing here. Here is another query I'm running. Add the df command. This is running the query. Here we go. But take a look at this. If I run this query, can I run the same queries that I just showed you in there? Sure. I would just put my query in here. See this? This is what I would do. That's all. And then I would get the result. So like, let's see, let me see. So where is the thing? Here it is, right? So I'm gonna take this guy here, but without the semicolon. And by the way, nulls last, it means what to do with the nulls value. Here, when I'm sorting, I want to put the blank values at the end. If there is no location, because sometimes location can be blank, it's not a required field. Okay, so now I'm gonna go here. This is my RStudio, right? And this is what I'm going to do now. Instead of this, I'm gonna put this. Right? So this is a query. I'm gonna run it. Let's see. There we go. It works. Do you see that? I just ran it. See? Here it is. So basically, if for some reason the DB2 warehouse in the cloud console goes down, but the database still responds, right? You still can log in from R, then you have an option to run your assignment 3 queries in R. This will be accepted also. Yeah, definitely. But if you're troubleshooting, it's easier to troubleshoot in a SQL interface. But again, there is more than one way to do it. We have R people, or we have, like me, more like SQL people. But, well, it's good to know both ways. I want you to know both ways, and I also want you to know how to troubleshoot. That's my goal. Okay, did I answer the question? Did I answer the question? Silence is consensus. All right, yes. Oh, do you have to install any packages? Regarding package installation, no. The only package that you need to install is a Snowball C. That's it. Nothing else. Only Snowball C, because that one is for the stemming. Other than that, everything is there for you. Everything, text mining, and everything that you need to use for this assignment is in there. Well, the only exception is a Snowball C, okay? But if you want to use something that's not in the walkthrough for your assignment 3, this is what you're gonna do. Your first step is to check if this package is already available, right, in the system library here. If it is, outstanding, go ahead, go beyond, use it. If it's not, then you'll need to check with me or Lineage, because, well, there could be compatibility issues. Let's do that. You're gonna stay with what's in here. And you have a lot. Right now, you even have the package for naive Bayes method. It was not there last semester. So that package was not even there. Now, new stuff is the maps. I believe you now have the package if you want to do geospatial analysis, but promise me first, you have to make sure that you have the minimum working, right? Well, I understand that minimum will get you a B, but to aim for an A, you need to do more. But first, you have to get the minimum working, and then you build on top of it, right? Because I've had people who get ambitious and then they get nothing to work, and it's a due date, assignment due date. So there should be a balance, right? Yeah. But again, you want to avoid the installation. Trust me. Okay? But this assignment is the hardest, but it's really rewarding at the end. People say it's hard, but then they do well. So, yeah, it motivates you to work hard. So, it's hard, but people do well in the end. All right? Any more questions? And Linesh, go ahead and add your suggestions, because your suggestions are very valuable. Also, you were a student recently, right? Well, a few years ago.
Yep. I think you pretty much covered it all. Especially from suggestions perspective, what to do, what not to do. Very, very important, especially with some of the issues that we've seen in the past. The one that comes up right on the top of the list is the units getting consumed, and I think you covered that, because that's the biggest thing. Once all your units are consumed for the month, it takes a lot to really do anything about it, or we have to get around that problem. So the other things, you can still fix it if there's things in the code. You can fix it with some time given to it. But once you lose the units, the capacity units for the month, it takes a lot to get around that problem. So that should be number one on your list. So everything that Yelena mentioned about, closing your sessions and making sure the runtimes have been shut down properly, has a lot of value. So please take note of that. Trust me, every semester, right from the time I'd been a student to this point in time, I've seen that almost at the top of the list. That kind of error, because there's always something that either folks missed or just did not pay a lot of attention to. So that would be my biggest suggestion to everyone.
And also try to get your, well, try to finish your tutorial thing. Well, the way it's configured is this. Well, your tutorial, it's officially due end of next week, end of this week, right? Well, okay, but well, end of this week, yes. But if you finish it a little bit earlier, you winning yourself more time for the assignment 3. So this coming weekend you have this due, right? But if you submit it a little earlier, you get access to assignment 3 because your assignment 3 has a condition. It has a release condition. You will not be able to access it, right? No assignment 3 access until you get the sentiment analysis tutorial turned in. So this one has a release condition. You have to submit the sentiment analysis tutorial in order to see the assignment 3, okay? That includes the assignments 3 requirements and the data files. You'll be able to choose 1 out of 2 files, okay? So just keep that in mind. The longer you take on this assignment, the less time you have for the next assignment. Oops, what's going on? So after this, I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the SQL statement. Okay, so let's see.
Well, I have few words, few suggestions before we finishing because I don't see more question. So by the question going on in the Q&A, I feel like people are following the instruction. Of course, the instruction are dense of the tutorial, but it's like my perception is you guys, you're following them, or some of you blindly, and in few minutes, in few hours, you don't remember what you did, and this is not helpful. I would tell you, better spend a little more time but understand what you are doing, because if you did something 2 hours ago and the next step you already have forgotten and you are asking about something which is related with what you did 2 hours ago, this is not helpful for learning. So my suggestion is, even if you are in rush of time, make sure you understand what you are doing. This is very, very important. Otherwise, it makes no sense to do it. You know what? And the thing is, there are so many steps, so many things connected, and you must understand what with what is connected and why. This is part of learning complex application we are doing in very advanced technology, and there are many, many not to tie together. So that is my main suggestion. Try to understand what you are doing. Don't miss the main point. If there are no more questions, I don't see anything in the chat. They can unmute yourself.
Oh, and another thing, do not contact IBM because they don't know what your homework is. They're not going to do the homework for you. Okay?
I think this is already clear.
Yeah.
This company is managing the cloud for everyone from company. They have no idea whatsoever what we are doing as a university.
Yeah.
There is not their business what we are doing. We are just using the resources. Everything which has to do with the material, how we use this resource or the other is totally our business. They have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So no more question. If no more question, I will end the recording and hopefully it's gonna have it tomorrow.